witnessed the impact of inequalities on communities of color. Can we break through silos of race, class, and gender? Only together can we bridge communities. Join us to bridge the gap. Build NYC present the Women Bridging Community Speaker Series, empowering the next generation of Latinx and Black women to successfully navigate spaces of power and privilege.
We are powerful and we can do what we put our mind to. I need to make it. I do. I need to change my neighborhood. So I need to succeed in life for me to go ahead and help my neighborhood.
I actually got to watch a dream come true and to live something that I dreamt about. And in that moment, I got to say to myself, well, now it's time to dream even bigger. Carol's Daughter began in my kitchen. It started with my love of fragrance and me creating my own fragrances. And then I wanted a moisturizer scented with those fragrances. I was working and listening to Oprah, and the show was about people who had started businesses from their hobby. There was this checklist that they were going through, and I just had this moment of realizing this thing that I was calling a hobby could actually be a business. My mom, Carol, was not a beauty junkie at all. She found it very difficult in the 60s to find something that actually matched her skin. It was my mom who encouraged me to sell at a church flea market 24 years ago. Being on the Oprah show, being able to meet Oprah, there's so many levels to how magical that was. And realizing in that moment that I belonged where I was standing. A really big milestone occurred one night. I see a picture of our product and I realize that it is a display at the National Museum of African American History and Culture that credits me as a pioneer in the natural hair care industry. That was by far one of the most amazing moments in my career, and to see my name and my company's name and my product in such a beautiful place that tells our story in such an amazing way. I can't even find words to describe how fortunate I feel. Nothing greater than that, nothing.
And then any other final things you want to tell the Build community?
I just want to thank whoever came up with this idea of Build, and it has changed a lot of lives.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shamika Alphonse, the Regional Executive Director for Build NYC. Thank you for joining us this Giving Tuesday for our second fireside chat as part of Build NYC's Women Bridging Community Speaker Series. Through these intimate conversations, we aspire to introduce our female students and the greater Build community to dynamic women who are trailblazers and phenomenal leaders. In light of the inequalities that still persist, we believe it is incredibly important to remind students that they too can successfully navigate spaces of privilege and power, regardless of their skin tone or zip code. Our work is especially critical in 2020. In the midst of this pandemic and so much uncertainty, we know the importance of inspiring young people to persevere and to stay the course, even when success seems out of reach. We are so excited to have successful entrepreneurs and professionals like Lisa Price today to share their journey and offer some hope in this season. In addition to sharing these career exposure opportunities, Build's focus is to use the power of entrepreneurship to ignite the potential of youth, equipping them with skills for academic, career, and life success. Through the process of learning about design thinking and starting a business, our students learn to tap into their creativity, solve problems, gain critical digital literacy skills, and become effective communicators. And I have to say that in this season of this pandemic, Build has had to step in and fill the gap in many, many areas, providing technology, providing resources to mental health services. So yes, we use and do entrepreneurship to really empower young people. But any other tool that we have available or any other resource we need to bring to young people, we do that work. So we serve students across the country. We're in New York, the Bay Area, Los Angeles, Boston, and Washington, D.C. And I do have to shout out our Build students and staff who are joining us today. We are able to do this impactful programming thanks to the generosity of our corporate partners and that of our employee and their employees, our employees too. Today, it is my pleasure to extend a very special thank you to Lisa Price and the teams at Carol's Daughter and L'Oreal for your support and belief in our work. And to our L'Oreal viewers, thank you for donating to Build. Your funds up to $25,000 are being matched by the company. And good news, you still have time to donate if you haven't already. So please make note of that and think about making a gift today. And before I turn it over to my colleague, Dakota Letman, I want to make sure that I thank our Women's Committee members for planning these special events. To Laura Patel, Andrea Atwell, Nicole Forgo, Erica Culpepper, Amy Penn, Kara Kubrich, and Sean Merriweather, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for truly pouring your hearts and souls into this work. And we are very grateful for all that you're doing for the Build community. So now, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Dakota Letman, our Community Engagement Manager, and also our MC for today.
Thank you, Shamika. Peace, everyone. It is such a pleasure to see you all. We have 171 people in the building already, and the number is counting. So I'm so happy to be here and share a stage with Miss Lisa Price and Miss Erica Culpepper. Growing up, I was born and raised in the Bronx. I am a first-generation American. My mom comes from Jamaica, and I was born and raised in the South Bronx. She migrated from Jamaica at I want to say 18 or 20 years old. So when I think about the strength of a Black woman, that's the first person I think about because she's the person that I saw make so many sacrifices for me growing up. And it pushed me in a different way. Growing up and when I decided to finally figure out what it is I wanted to do in life, and I knew that I wanted to create a lane for myself. I wanted to foster my own future and just create a life that only I can just be passionate and happy about. So seeing the sacrifices that my mom made and then being able to continue doing that. And I went to school for communications and I knew that, okay, whatever it is I decide to do, I want to pay it forward. I want to make a difference. So I want to make sure that you guys can see me properly. I chose to major in communications because I knew that when I was in high school, I could not have a quote unquote typical 9 to 5. I wanted something that I can really be hands-on with, create a space where I can just get really creative and innovative. And after I majored in communications, I decided to study public relations and do PR for a while, but then also go back to school and study political science. So this I bring up is because I honestly wanted to merge the two between poli-sci and communications and find a way to balance how can I make a difference in my community and still pay it forward. Places like Build and being here, being the community engagement manager at Build gave me that opportunity because fortunately, one of the schools that I work with now is my alma mater, Kennedy, John F. Kennedy High School. And it's people like Lisa Price, Shamika, Kenya George, who is my supervisor, and Shamika, who also is at Build, women like that make me feel so special as a Black woman and just make me feel that these are the spaces we need. These are the conversations that we need to have, because when I was in high school, I didn't necessarily have this. Outside of my mom, I didn't have an outlet or a space where I can actually feel that I had that guidance. So it really means a lot to me to share the stage with you all today and to just continue hearing stories like this and to hope that other girls, young girls that are currently in Kennedy High School or in other high schools throughout the city or a part of the Build program can see stories like Lisa's Price and feel inspired and push forward and pay it forward. So today we are so excited to have you all in the house. We are now at 182. We'll continue keeping this energy. Please feel free to use the chat function. Also, drop your questions in the chat room. We'll be sharing that. We'll have a Q&A after our conversation. And now, without any further ado, I would like to introduce Miss Erica Culpepper, who is the General Manager of L'Oreal.
Thank you, Dakota. Thank you so much. I am so excited about today. I have been looking forward to this since for the last couple of weeks. And the energy that I feel already from just being here a few minutes is exactly the energy that we wanted this event to have, for it to feel intimate and like a true fireside chat amongst friends. And I think that's what you're going to get today. You're going to be in for a real treat. So like Dakota said, I'm Erica Culpepper. I work for L'Oreal as general manager. I've been here 16 years. And one of my proudest accomplishments that I have had since I've been with this company is to welcome Carol's daughter into the family. And I was the one Black woman on the side of the L'Oreal table, and Lisa Price was on the side of the Carol's daughter table. And I could not have been prouder to meet her and to welcome her along with our team to L'Oreal. So without further ado, I am going to ask Lisa to join on this stage so we can hear all about her and her inspiring story. Hey, Lisa.
Hi.
Good morning or afternoon.
Hello. Of course, my machine wants to do something different that it did not do earlier today. So, yeah.
I see you and hear you fine.
Okay, great. It's asking me to update my device settings. No, not now.
No, I see you. I see you. I see you and I hear you.
Great.
So Lisa, I think our viewers and listeners are going to be in for a treat, because this is what we do all the time, but we don't do it on a public stage. So we got to keep it viewer friendly. And we get to talk and laugh and cry sometimes. Like, we go through everything together, working next to each other side by side. So I always say, nobody can tell Lisa Price's story like Lisa Price. Nobody can introduce her except for her. So I'm going to turn it over to you to have you tell us a little bit about your story and how you got here.
Okay. I am Lisa Price. I'm the founder of Carol's Daughter. I founded Carol's Daughter in 1993 at the encouragement of my mother, whose name is Carol. So I actually am Carol's daughter. She encouraged me to sell my products at a church flea market. And it was the first time that I handed my products over to someone that I did not know, and they gave me money in return. And at that first flea market, I was given a flyer for a craft fair that was coming up in Brooklyn the following weekend. And I did that craft fair, and that craft fair led to another craft fair, and then that led to an expo. And the summer of 1993, I basically spent my weekends in Brooklyn, in different neighborhoods in Brooklyn, selling my products, building a clientele, and also an awareness that I had something to offer. And this thing that I had referred to as my hobby and what I did in my spare time to, be calm and just play around in my kitchen began to reveal itself to be something more than that. And I began to lean into the idea of it potentially being a business. But even at that time, I thought that it might be something that allowed me to contribute financially to the household. I thought that it might be the job that I did whenever I decided to become a mother, when my husband and I decided to have children, because at that time, my profession was television production, which was really long hours. And I always wondered, well, what am I going to do whenever we decide to have a family? Because a nanny would basically have to live with us, and we didn't make that much money. So I started to realize that this thing that was a hobby could be much more than that. It grew beyond my expectations. And, 27 years later, I'm grateful to still be here, to still be running the brand, to still be relevant, to still be successful, and to still be happy, most important.
Yes. Okay, Lisa, you being modest. So I'm going to say what you never say, because I am that girl. I'm going to say it. You created a category, okay? You created what is now known as the natural hair category, which has completely revolutionized not just Black hair care, but hair care not just in the United States, but in the world, because the trends that you set are now global trends. So that you did, the little girl from Brooklyn. So did you, for one, ever imagine that your hobby was going to create this behemoth of a completely new category, for one? Did you ever anticipate that this will become a multi-million-dollar business? And not only did you create a multi-million-dollar business, you attracted the attention of some of the biggest celebrity names ever. Anybody ever heard of Mr. Will Smith? Jay-Z, Mary J. Blige, and the list goes on and on and on as celebrity investors. So kind of give us an idea of what that journey was like to know that you had really created something that was huge.
Well, you know, the fortunate thing is that at the time that you're doing it, you are not at all aware that that is what you're doing. And I think that's a good thing, because you just focus on the work and you focus on each day. And then later you get to look back and reflect and say, oh, wow, look at what I did. So I was operating from a place of passion, doing what I love to do, bringing people the best products that I could, you know, creating things in my kitchen, testing them out with people, taking in their feedback, and not really focused on, is this the best? Am I the best? It was more, am I making people happy? Am I making their lives easier? Am I solving problems for them? Because when you talk about me creating an industry, that is accurate. But what I was thinking about was the fact that there was nothing there for her, meaning there was also nothing there for me. And we were not being spoken to, and our needs weren't being addressed. And we were trying to make things that were actually made for other people work for us, and feeling frustrated. So the narrative was, we were difficult. Our hair is difficult. Our hair is challenging. Our hair needs extra whatever. Oh, you have to use 2 bottles of conditioner? Well, that's your hair. And that's not really an accurate narrative. There isn't anything wrong with us. Our hair is not challenging. It's just our hair. Yeah. It's different, and no one formulated for that. So my focus was trying to make people's lives easier. The interesting thing about the celebrity connection with the brand is Will Smith found out about Carol's daughter through Jada. Jada found out.
Another story. Yes, you got to do the whole thing.
Found out about Carol's daughter from Jazzy Jeff. To this day, I have not met Jazzy Jeff. I've never had a conversation with Jazzy Jeff. I always say thank you to him when I do interviews like this and I tell the story, because what I found out was Jazzy Jeff knew that Jada was a product junkie. Somehow he found out about Carol's daughter, and he used to order stuff for her. And our order taking service misspelled his name, and I would get the orders for Jess Towns. So 2 S's, not 2 F's. And I assumed this woman, Jess, just loved our stuff and she was buying lots of product. But it was actually Jeff Towns who was shopping for Jada. And then later I was able to, you know, meet Jada and make the connection and all of that. So when my business partner, Steve Stout, approached Will and Jada about being involved in the brand as investors, they were already customers. And, you know, their concern was just leave it the way that it is. Like, let's not mess it up. Let's just make it bigger. Let's let more people find out about it, but let's not change what it is because it's so special. And I don't think you could ask for better like thought process going into a partnership than that.
Wow. So they just believed in the product simply because how great you had made it. Okay, so let's talk about investment a little bit, because we know that 1% of venture funding goes to Black founders. And what was fundraising like for you? Like, what was that experience like for you in order to attract people to invest in your business?
When I began to speak to people about investing, what was difficult was people wanted me to be something that I wasn't. So there was a relaxer company at the time who wanted to have something under their belt that was natural, and thought that I would be that person. But there was kind of no way to disassociate from the legacy of their relaxer business, and it wouldn't be the right fit. Today, having a better understanding of the business and market and all that kind of stuff, I can articulate all of the reasons why that was a bad idea. But at the time, I just knew this is not right. This doesn't add up. It doesn't work. And I remember my consultant saying, but you should really think about it, because this is a really big company and this could be, a lot of exposure for you. But I just knew that it wasn't right. And I didn't feel an urgency from the place of, I've got to find someone right now. It was more, I knew that I needed it. I knew that I needed an investor. I knew that I was at the point that I couldn't grow it anymore by myself. But I also knew my worth in that I had a consumer who wanted my product. I had demand, and I knew I had good product. So I didn't feel like I have to make this decision right now. And I was grateful because it allowed for me to go to these meetings and basically learn what was not right for me. So that when the right person was sitting in front of me, I could recognize him and see him, because I had seen all the wrong people before.
Okay, so I want you, that's a good segue. We only have 10 minutes left. So I'm like, we got to do lightning round, because you know how we are. We talk a lot. Okay, which is great. So Lisa, in that same vein, because you said you knew when it was right and when it was wrong. And so when you walked into the L'Oreal building, because I want to kind of talk a minute, I want to talk about the great things, but then share what some of the challenges were. Like, what was that like for you, deciding that you wanted to have a conglomerate to be your partner, if you will, in terms of how you wanted to grow your business long term? So talk to us about how you attracted L'Oreal and that process.
Well, when you build a business the way that I did, trying to tell this story quickly, when you have investors and then you have equity partners, you are operating day to day within your business, knowing that at some point there needs to be an exit strategy. You're going to have to be acquired by another brand in order for all of these people to get their money back, and then hopefully some profit, and then for me to get some money as well for all of the years that I invested in my business. So in the back of my mind, I knew there were two companies, and L'Oreal was the first one on that list that made sense to me, that made sense as the next chapter of this brand. And when I had my first meeting at L'Oreal, which was kind of a look-see, we weren't even selling ourselves yet. Someone at L'Oreal asked to have a conversation, and we went in to have the conversation. And every step of entering the building, getting my ID badge, going up to the conference room, there was a comfort level, even though I was very nervous, there was a comfort level of you're where you're supposed to be. And I remember intuitively knowing which way to go, even though I had never been there before. And for me, that's like a signal from the universe that I'm in the right place. So in my mind, I remember hearing the conference room is straight ahead and on the left. And then someone said, the conference room is straight ahead and on the left. Wow. And when I sat in that meeting, the meeting almost felt scripted. There were moments when somebody would say something and in my mind, I would hear cue laughter.
and then people around the room would laugh.
Lisa, I'm getting chills. I'm sure everybody, this is insane.
It was almost like I was following a script when I was, but I wasn't. But that's just how smoothly it went. And again, it was not a meeting about acquisition. It was just to get to know you. But I knew when I left that building that I was going to be back. And at that time, the ID badges that you would get as a visitor had a big V on the front for visitor. And I placed my ID badge on my vision board at home because that was my vision. So I had the big V and L'Oreal. And I guess it was 2 years later that vision became real.
Wow. Oh my God. No words. No words. Total mic drop. So what was it like? Okay, we got 4 minutes. So in 4 minutes, we're gonna talk about what was it like? Like, did the dream come true? So what was it like after the dream came true? Then I want to know what advice you would have for other women. And then I want to give advice to the students. So we're gonna do those last 3.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, to say, did the dream come true is accurate, but it's even more than that because there's multiple dreams that come true to get to that place, and you just keep dreaming bigger. My favorite story about the process is we were on vacation in the islands at the time of due diligence. So there's a period of time when the company makes a formal offer, and then you go through this process of if it's actually going to happen. And the formal offer was made in July while my family and I were on vacation. And outside of where we were staying, it was kind of like an Airbnb thing. There was a boat docked right outside of where we were staying. And the name of the boat was called Someday Came. And I remember my husband saying to me after I showed him the email with the official offer letter, and he said, go outside on the balcony, because he saw it when I first got there, but he didn't point it out to me. He said, go outside on the balcony, look at the name of that boat. And he had to give me binoculars to read it. And I started crying when I saw that it said Someday Came. So yes, someday came, and there were lots of dreams to get to that day. Advice that I would give to women entrepreneurs, you said? Yeah.
Women, and especially women of color.
Always know your story. Never be tired of telling your story. I remember there was a period of time when I would feel like I was bragging. Why am I telling this again? Don't people know it? I really don't want to sound like I'm talking about myself. Is it okay for me to do that? And unfortunately, I learned the hard way that if you stop telling your story, then other people try to tell it for you, and they tell it wrong. So don't stop telling your story. Don't ever stop being your storyteller. And you will learn that your story becomes your marketing, because creative people figure out how to take your story and turn it into a font and a color and a texture and a language. And you may not be that marketing person to figure out how to do that, but it is what your story does. And your story distinguishes you from other people. You know, I always say there's, people that make cupcakes. There's lots of cupcake companies, but the story about why the person began making cupcakes, the ingredients that they use, why they use them, how they sell them, who they donate to when they have excess money, what's their community platform. All of that is their story. All of that is their marketing. And that is what someone else cannot copy. They can copy your recipe. They can copy your logo. They can copy your direction, but they can't copy your story. So that no one is ever going to be Carol's daughter. There'll be companies bigger than me. There'll be companies more successful than me, but they won't be me. And there are lots of companies that have started in their kitchens, but they're still not me. They're still not me. And women of color, I feel that we have to, I learned this in 2020, so this is a recent thing. We must congratulate ourselves every day just for surviving, because there's so much that we have to do that is more difficult, because unfortunately, when we walk into a room, people do not see who we are. When I was in the lobby of a hotel in Palm Beach, Florida, waiting for a car to come and pick me up, it did not stop a guest asking me for extra towels in her room. She did not see a successful businesswoman sitting in the lobby. Mind you, I was dressed for dinner. Why she thought I worked at the hotel, that's another conversation. But she did not see a successful business person. She did not see someone that had just sold their company to L'Oreal. She did not see someone who had 80 employees. She saw someone brown who could get her towels.
Yeah.
And that's the reality where we live. And so when we make it through the day, it's not just making it through the day. And the world, because the world does not recognize that it does this to us, the world doesn't take time to applaud us. The world doesn't take time to tell us how strong we are, how brave we are. So we have to say it for ourselves. And every single day. Because you're doing everything harder than everybody else has to. Because when you walk in the room, unfortunately, you're angry, you're not strong, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So many jewels, so many jewels, so many jewels, and not enough time. Okay. So the one interjection I will say is that story about telling your story. I have never heard you, and we work together side by side every day for like the last 6 years. I have never heard you say it that way, but you live it. And even if I think about how we started this talk, what did I say? Lisa has to tell her own story because nobody can tell her story like her. So now I see why. So thank you for that, Jewel. And the last thing I want to ask you before I turn it over to the students, and I can't wait to hear their questions, what would be your advice to the next generation of women entrepreneurs, especially Black women or women of color? What would you say to inspire and motivate the young ladies?
I would say everything that I've already said. You know, you have to applaud yourself. You have to recognize how strong and powerful you are, and continue to take advantage of services that are available. I think there will be more of them available. Keep using your voice to speak up for what you need, and try very hard to have people around you that you can go to and talk to. Because sometimes we need people to encourage us. And then sometimes we need people to remind us of who we are. And then sometimes we need people to tell us that everything is okay, even when it's not okay. And the fact that you are living through this year, 2020, and maybe you're 18, maybe you're 17, maybe you're 21, I can't imagine what the experience of this year is going to mean for you when you're 30 and 40 and 50, because at 58, it has been a remarkable year for me, and so much growth and so much discovery, where, you know, you would think at 58, I should know a lot. And I did know a lot, but you just learned so much more. So always keep yourself open. And if you start to doubt or question, just take a moment and try to examine if you're doubting yourself for a legitimate reason, or if you're doubting yourself because of a false belief that has been planted in your brain. Because that's something that I still have to do. It's like, wait a second, did I really screw up here? Or, you know, what lesson am I supposed to learn? You know, when you encounter an obstacle, don't look at it as a failure. Look at it as an opportunity to learn. What am I supposed to learn here? Yeah, that would be my advice.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Wow. Oh, good, Erica. This was wow. First of all, I'm just like in awe just seeing two beautiful Black women. Like, I'm sharing the stage with you ladies, and you've paved the way for young girls like me. And I'll be paving the way for girls younger than me. So I just give thanks to both of you. And Lisa, thank you so much for that story and just sharing space with us today. So now it's time for us to get into some good questions from some of our very own Build students, and then we'll open it up to the floor and our audience in the room. So first up, we have Miss Olivia, one of our Build students, Miss Olivia. And students, a friendly reminder to please just share your full name and what school you're representing today. And Olivia will be joining us momentarily. Olivia, can you hear us?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good. The floor is yours.
I would like to thank you, Erica and Lisa, for having me here today. Thank you so much. I am very inspired by both of you guys. I do have a question. How do you navigate being one of the few Black women in places of power? And I am a sophomore at New Design High School. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Olivia. Do you want to take that one, Erica?
I could tell. I knew you wanted me to take that one. I'm like, I'll do it, Lisa. I'll do that one.
Well, your background is a little different than mine, so.
Yes, exactly. I think that's why we complement each other so well. But Olivia, I think we all have to realize that we have something unique to bring to the table. And as you are growing in your career, you have to really be confident in who you are and what it is you bring to the table, and recognize that you are there for a reason, and you have value and you have insights that are much needed. And if you come in and act like everybody else, then you do yourself a disservice and you do everybody around you a disservice, in that you are not bringing your unique self to the office. And that was something I learned very early in my career. I'll make a long story short. I went into the cafeteria, and I felt like everybody was staring at me in the cafeteria because I was the only Black person, and I wanted to shrink in the cafeteria. And a few months passed, and as I got to know people, people didn't know who I was, so they wanted to get to know me. They weren't worried about the fact that I was Black. So sometimes we have to get out of our own heads and just show up and be 100% our unique and authentic selves, and make people proud to be around you and proud to hear what you have to say.
Yep. Wow. Unfortunately, she said thank you so much in our chat, but we lost her on video. Thank you for that, Erica. Next up, we have Samara, another Build student, Samara, and she'll be joining us. And please feel free, if you're in the audience, to share your questions. Continue dropping them. We'll have space and time at the end to ask and answer more questions.
Hello, my name is Samara Harris. I'm a senior at High School for Innovations in Advertising and Media. I just wanted to thank you, Lisa, Erica, and Dakota, for just having me today and sharing your story. You guys are inspiration to a lot of us young Black young ladies out here, so I really appreciate it. One question that I had is, being in an industry of limited people of color, how do you deal with the adversity and doubt that may come along?
The doubt that you might have in yourself, or the doubt that other people may have in you because they don't know you?
The doubt that other people may have. I think both, because sometimes you can have a lot of self-doubt, and then sometimes we may feel the doubt of others. So how do you deal with both?
Well, I have to say that I'm grateful that I had parents and a family who, even though they knew that people might judge me differently because of the color of my skin, they continued to tell me that there wasn't anything that I could not do. They reminded me that I was intelligent, and to use my intelligence and to use my words to express myself to people. So even though I did those things from a place of maybe feeling bashful, because I'm not an outgoing person, I'm more of an introvert, my family helped to build that confidence in me. And, you know, there are times when it is challenging, and, you know, there are times when you also want to react in a way that wouldn't be beneficial to the situation, when you just want to pop off. And Erica can tell you about the times that I have popped off. But I'm a lot older and I'm a lot further along in my career where I can get away with it every now and then. But I could not do that when I was younger. And, you know, it's taking that deep breath, remembering who you are, remembering what you know, and speaking your truth, and speaking it as calmly as you can, but passionately, and learning each time. And then, God willing, we will get to a place where you don't have to edit yourself anymore. I mean, I can say that things are a lot better today than they were when I was younger, but we still have a lot more work to go. But don't let it stop you. It's okay to feel uncomfortable, but keep moving forward even when you feel uncomfortable.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm cracking up because she said that very nice, but she can really, really get, we'll just call it Brooklyn. I love when she does that, but it's pretty intense. What advice would you give for founders thinking about selling their business?
Well, please make sure that you have lawyers and financial people to advise you so that you understand the correct value of your company, so that if you do choose to sell it, you get paid what you should get paid for it. You know, looking at the situation and figuring out what works for you. Or do you want to sell it because then you want to be involved and still run it? It would have to be negotiated that way. And again, that's where your lawyers and your advisors would come into play with that. But just knowing your worth is the most important part of that process, so that you understand that what is being offered to you is actually what you deserve for that company.
Yes. So Lisa, what were some of the barriers you had in terms of building your business? Any barriers you want to talk about?
Sure. What's interesting is that the barriers that occurred, like not having enough money, not being able to make certain improvements to things because you don't have enough money, trying to figure out what it means to have a staff. You know, like some people who are entrepreneurs, we used to work for other people. We weren't necessarily the bosses. And then if we were supervisors or managers, maybe we had 2 or 3 people working with us, maybe 4, but not a staff of, 40 people. And how do you all of a sudden learn how to manage and inspire 40 people? There's no book that you could, HR for dummies, It's just something that you kind of have to learn as you go. But the interesting thing is that at the time that you're going through that process, I mean, my story anyway, there was a lot of, oh gosh, I don't know how to do this and I don't know how to do that. And if I could do this, this would be so much better. And not a recognition of, why should I know how to do these things? When would I have learned this? So I think it's important that you get out of your own head and get out of your own way, and just recognize that the obstacles that you're encountering are normal, because it's life, and life doesn't run perfectly, and business has difficulties. And if you're new to being in business, you're learning it as you go. So again, all of those obstacles and failures are opportunities to learn and do better. So, what is that? Fail quick, fail fast, keep moving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I love how you had shared before about how you had to hire people to do things that you didn't know how to do. So here you are the founder and the expert, but there are still pieces of business that you had to learn along the way, and you had to have people in place to help bring you along.
And you have to hire people that also know how to do things better than you do. So that you could focus on the thing that's most important. So when you don't tell your story and you don't recognize your importance, you forget that you're a very, very important part of the business. Because when it comes to vision and new products and ideas, they have to come from you. So you have to let other people who are better at operations and finance and things like that do what they need to do so that you could focus on what you have to focus on.
So Marin, one of our students, did have a question. She asked, my question is, how do you advocate for yourself and how do you make sure that you are not overlooked?
I would say that you just do it. You advocate for yourself and you recognize that it is not going to feel comfortable the first time that you do it. Like if you think about, like let's say that you never took a yoga class before and then you go to a yoga class for the first time. So you're doing things in the yoga class that you've never done before. Maybe you feel clumsy. You try to do a pose and you tumble over because you don't have the balance yet. But you decide that there's something about the yoga that you like. So you keep going back. And then 3 weeks later, you don't topple over when you do that pose. And 2 months later, like, oh, wow, look at that. I can do a headstand. I can stand on my head. I couldn't do that before. Because each time that you do it, there's certain things that get a little bit easier to do because you build those muscles and you build that technique and that balance. So the first time that you advocate for yourself, it's really uncomfortable. You'll probably have cotton mouth. The words will escape you. It'll be a challenge, but keep doing it. Because the more you do it, the easier it gets, the better it flows. Your words don't get caught up. You don't get cotton mouth. You don't need a glass of water to make a statement, but you have to start by doing it, even though it's uncomfortable.
Wow. Advocating for yourself is always so hard. And I'm happy that you brought that up because it's not an easy task. And I can only imagine, even as like a Black woman, trying to advocate for yourself in the workplace. So thank you for answering that question on behalf of Marin. And we have one final question. How do you assimilate? How do you assimilate without losing the parts of your culture that are unique? Which is similar to the protective styles question, because I'm still trying to figure that out myself. You don't.
You
okay.
don't. You don't. You don't. No, absolutely not. No.
Do not.
No.
No.
If you can't show up as your authentic self, if you can't wear your protective styles to work, that's not where you want to work.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to be there. If you can't accept me for who I really am, that's not where I want to be. And I know everybody can't. Everybody may not feel confident to take that kind of stance, but if you don't, who will? And a lot of times we allow these preconceptions and stereotypes, we allow those things to fester. And somebody has got to be one to take a stand and say, this is not acceptable. So either you go there and you fight, or you go to places where you're wanted and appreciated, and people are excited to see you show up and be yourself.
Wow.
And there are times when you may be in a certain room, you may be going to a meeting that's important, you may be pitching something, and you're nervous and you feel that you want to show up a certain way because you want people to listen to you. To me, that's not assimilating. It's just making an edit for the moment.
Right.
And then later, when you have the leverage that you need, you can be more yourself. So for example, if I had to go into a meeting and I know that I'm going to be in a room with very conservative people and their exposure is limited to certain cultures, I may not walk in with these earrings if I don't want these earrings to be the topic of conversation. Now that may be to my advantage. Yes, let me wear my earrings from South Africa so that we can talk about Zulu tribe and travels, and that's going to take me to this place. But if I want you to focus on something else and I don't want this to be the topic of conversation, I'm going to take them off. I'm going to put something on that just blends in with the rest of my face because I need you to pay attention to what's coming out of here. So I make that edit for that moment, but I don't leave myself behind. And sure enough, somewhere on my body is going to be something that represents this. It just won't be obvious.
Whoa. Oh my,
But
so
you never assimilate. Never, ever, 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 ever.
My eyes are watery. Like, both of you gave such different responses, but with the same goal. And wow, like even the chat is on fire right now. Like that was like just a mic drop moment. That was wow. Never assimilate, but edit when needed. Wow. Okay. Ladies, thank you. Miss Lisa Price, we thank you. Miss Erica Culpepper, we thank you. This has been amazing. We hope that we can continue this conversation. And this is just one of many that we will continue. Shout out to our audience. We thank our audience. And I will now turn the floor over to Miss Shamika Alphonse.
Ladies, thank you so much for this conversation, this beautiful and honest conversation. Erica, I thank you for prompting Lisa to tell her story as she advised us to continue to tell our story. And thank you for giving her the proper props or accolades that she deserves. And thank you both for sharing the gems that you did. Being true to ourselves and walking authentically in our own skin is not always easy, but I thank you for sharing that with our young people, especially as we think about our Women Bridging Community series. It's all about making sure that we are able to show up no matter the color of our skin and be successful in spaces and either create room for ourselves or leave and then create our own thing, right? So we have options. So I wanted to take a moment to just say to our audience, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our staff for managing everything in our Build Tech issue land, which happens because it's 2020. But to our audience, this Giving Tuesday, it's about supporting great causes, and Build is one of them. So I am asking you, you see a push notification that came on your screen to make a donation today. So our L'Oreal folks, thank you so much for joining. Your company is matching. Let's please take advantage of that match. And to all the other friends, please make a donation. Again, Build has been able to step in and fill the gap this year. Not only are we providing entrepreneurial programming, not only are we building up spirits and making sure our students achieve their full potential and walking in their confidence, but we're also able to fill in the gaps where they are missing technology, where they're missing resources. We are trying to identify ways that we can support our families, because it's not just about our entrepreneurial programming, it's just to make sure that they can manage in this space, in this season of a pandemic. So please, make a donation, support our work. We are very, very grateful, and thank you again for joining us today.